Borthakur IAS Academy Prostuti aru Adhyayanor nirbhorjogyo thikona Borthakur IAS Academy.
Welcome to the Hindu analysis for 10th July 2021. Let us start with the first article today. India concerned at events in Afghanistan, says Jaishankar. Now our External Affairs Minister is on a state visit, meaning an official visit in Moscow, and on all the subjects that they are having a discussion in Moscow with their respective counterparts. It seems that during the discussions or the engagement, Afghanistan policy or the discussions around Afghanistan seems to be at the forefront of both Indian foreign policy and in respects with the Russians. Now, our External Affairs Minister stated that we are concerned about the direction of events in Afghanistan because there has been an increase in volatility in the society itself, because the country was left to work out its own problems by the US decision of pulling out of their troops by August of this month. See, first the Biden administration said that they are going to pull out of Afghanistan by September. Now, yesterday, President Biden came out and said that we are pulling out earlier than what we promised, and we are pulling out by the end of August, leaving a lot of situations unresolved. Now, there has been multiple international conferences to discuss on how to stabilize and bring peace to Afghanistan. And one thing that everybody understands or agrees is that it is highly impossible to give a time frame to a peace process in Afghanistan. And despite what other countries are saying, despite what America is saying, a peaceful Afghanistan is critically important for regional security and stability. Because if the violence doesn't reduce in Afghanistan, it will have huge implications on the security and the state stability of the region itself. Not even to mention how important it is for India to have a stable Afghanistan. Right, yesterday they after our External Affairs Minister and the Russian External Affairs Minister met, Taliban came out and said that we control around 85% of the territory right now. Even the Russian Minister confirmed that Taliban has officially taken over the border crossings with Iran and Tajikistan. We know Tajikistan because thousands of troops from Afghan security forces had abandoned their posts and ran to secure their own lives. Now, it is said that both the ministers, our External Affairs Minister and the Minister for Russia, discuss the evolving situation in Afghanistan. See, out of everybody who knows what Afghanistan is and how difficult Afghanistan is, Russians are the one to know because they lost a war there. And with that loss, the fall of Soviet Union began. They know the cost of getting into Afghanistan. So they have pretty much very checkered and shared history with Afghanistan. So as of now, situation is very fluid. It is evolving on a hour-to-hour basis because with the additional announcement that we are pulling out of Afghanistan much earlier than what we anticipated. Now this puts a lot of plans, this puts a lot of issues at the forefront of discussion for the sake of regional stability and regional security. So his meeting, our External Affairs Minister meeting in Moscow is not a coincidence, right? Right now, like a few days back, how our External Affairs Minister met the President-elect of Iran. At the same time, there was a meeting going on with the Taliban representatives, with the Iranian representatives. So in a move that is linked, might be linked, we are speculating here, but nonetheless, it is a coincidence that when our External Affairs Minister is in Moscow to meet with his respective counterparts, there is a delegation from Afghanistan that is meeting the representatives of Russian government. Now, as for the Taliban delegation which was visiting Moscow, has promised that they are not going to allow their soil, meaning Afghanistan, to be used against any other country for terror activities or for any other purposes. but you have to take that with a grain of salt. You cannot trust at this point of time what they are saying, because they are also saying that at the same time they will not tolerate any other international interventions, meaning let us put an end to this interventionist ideologies that other countries might have. Now, as the spokesperson for the Taliban, particularly the international media, they have spokespersons for each and every media in the world. So for the English media, he came out and assured that Taliban are not going to target diplomat, embassies and consulates, NGOs and their staff. The problem is, Taliban has time and again proved to both the Americans and the world that they are not going to take it silently, that they are willing to use violence to gain territory and land. See, they have been pretty much using military tactics to take control of land from the Afghan government. His statement that he is not going to go, or they are not going to harass NGOs or their staff or embassies, meaning they are not going to attack these people or kidnap these people, is significant. Because remember, whenever we discussed about Taliban, we discussed about their political recognition, meaning them being a legitimate political party, in the sense that they have the same recognition as the Afghan government. Until this point of time, they have been either designated as a terror organization or something like that. Now, when America decided to have negotiations with them, the moment America decided to have negotiations with them, America had to drop a lot of labels that they had been attached to Taliban. Now, Taliban is a legitimate force. Taliban is a legitimate authority in Afghanistan. That is why America is going ahead without the concern of Afghan government and made an agreement stating that on the promise that you are going to stop attacking us, we are going to pull out of Afghanistan. So that is why they are trying to build a persona of a legitimate authority so that they get recognition worldwide. That seems to be the idea behind all these statements and all these engagements. So if you remember a few days ago where embassies were being closed by Russia and other countries, it is important for India to get an assurance that our embassies will not be attacked. That was the primary concerns, where the embassy in Kabul came out and said that we are observing the movements closely, we are aware of what is going on, but we are not willing to close the embassy doors or mission doors. So at this point of time, it becomes an issue. See, as I said earlier, they have shown that they are capable of using military style violence and furthermore serious kinds of violence to gain control and territory. What everybody is afraid right now at this point, forget about the long-standing peace in Afghanistan. What everybody is worried about, what about embassies, what about consulates, what about diplomats, and what about various non-governmental organizations and their staff who happen to be foreign most of the time? What will happen to these people under the territory that is being held by Taliban right now? So India should be concerned, and India is pretty much concerned, because Afghanistan, or the peace in Afghanistan, is always linked to the regional security and regional stability. And at the entire thing, you have to underline the entire sentence, and next to that you have to write in capital letters, India's own security. So moving on to the next article, Biden defends Afghan pullout. So as I said earlier, the US troops pullout is almost complete in Afghanistan, and the US president said that US is not going to wait for few more months, but he said that US military mission in Afghanistan would be concluded by August 13, much earlier than what the September deadline was supposed to be. Now he said that America is not in the process or not in the business of building nations. We went into Afghanistan for the sole purpose of defeating Al-Qaeda. Our objective in Afghanistan has been completed. Right, again he is reiterating the stance that we are not in the process of building nations, we are not in the process of building democracies. Our objective to go into Afghanistan was solely to defeat Al-Qaeda, and our military objective or military mission has been successful. Is the mission really a success? The question is I'll leave it to you. Now, when America said that we are going to pull out of Afghanistan after 20 years presence in the country, many countries, including generals in the Pentagon of the United States, criticized the government move. This did not start with US President Biden. This started with Donald Trump, because when the first ideas of pull out of troops from Mr. Obama, when Mr. Obama was President of the United States, during his second term, during his first term, he promised in one of his rallies that he is going to start pulling out troops from Afghanistan. But for whatever reasons, he could not achieve it. Instead of pulling out troops, he had to support them. He had to send few more troops into Afghanistan. Now, when President Trump came into power, he made it one of his sole foreign policy agendas to pull out of Afghanistan, irrespective of what the situation is. On the instances of Trump, the Americans went and see, it's not that the policy was not in discussions. Since Obama, the policy has been discussions. What Mr. Trump during his presidency did was, instead of engaging negotiating a peace deal with Afghan government and Taliban, the US government went and negotiated a peace deal directly with the Taliban, entirely bypassing the Afghan government. That is why whenever you read in foreign policy or our external affairs minister statements in regards to peace process in Afghanistan, India at all times said that India is in for a peace process that is led by Afghan government. Any Afghan-led peace initiative, India will support it. The one which the Americans were talking about was not even led by Afghan government. It was an agreement between the US government and the Taliban. So they entirely sidestepped the democratically elected Afghan government. So Mr. Biden in his speech said that we did not go to Afghanistan to nation build, and it's the right and the responsibility of Afghan people alone to decide their future. Yes, after continuously bombing every infrastructure asset they had, now it is up to the sole prerogative of Afghan people to decide their own future. So this is going to be watershed moment in terms of what will happen in the future of Afghanistan. Right? The amount of violence in Afghanistan right now is, unimaginable. We talked about how the Bagram Air Force Base was left unguarded for 2 or 3 hours, and the American troops did not even inform the Afghan security forces that they were leaving the base. When the Afghan forces went there, they saw that these people, some civilians, were inside looting the airbase. Then they realized that Americans have already left the base. Then they went and took control of the airbase. The place was actually looted before Afghan troops could take over. So I imagine that the Americans didn't left any sensitive data or any weapons. They are not that thing. But nonetheless, it was it was an open season or an open buffet in the Bagram airbase for 2 or 3 hours before the Afghan troops took control of the airbase. So this is again an issue where nobody is questioning their intent in getting into it, because it has already happened. The question rises is, why are you leaving at a point where the violence has been at highest, where the Taliban controls more territory than they ever had control of, and Taliban has more support from many countries than they ever had. At least earlier it was only Pakistan and Iran. Now they have support from Saudi, they have support from Qatar, they have support from China, they have support from Pakistan. The Pakistan thing stays every time. So when a question was posed to Mr. Biden stating that if a Taliban takeover of Afghanistan was inevitable, He answered in a negative, pointing to the relative strength of Afghan forces in terms of troops, numbers and training and equipment. We know what has happened. Afghan security forces are abandoning posts. The only way that they are fighting is through their special forces. At one point or the other time, their number is simply isn't going to match up with that of the Taliban. So that seems to be the issue when we talk about Afghan pullout, and America seems to be thinking that they are doing the right thing. No question, they lost more people in Afghanistan than any other place, and they had a high number of troop deaths there. So as far as the peace process is in the making, it is like nothing is set in stone, right? He is of the opinion that in Afghanistan, Taliban is likely, unlike Afghan government is unlikely control whole country. They are also aware of the fact that they cannot, Afghan government cannot control majority of the territory, because it is highly unlikely right now with more than 80% of the territory being controlled by Taliban. So that is an unconfirmed report, but that is the issue. So moving on, Taliban now controls 85% of Afghanistan. As I said earlier, the Taliban has claimed on Friday that they have control of 85% of Afghanistan after seizing key border crossings with Iran and Turkmenistan. They have Tajikistan in the list also. Turkmenistan is the third one. Now this was the offensive that they launched the moment US troops exited from certain bases. So US President is defending his decision to withdraw of American troops. So now they are actually in the process of completing an arc of territory from Iranian border to the border with China. That is through a frontier with China. Now this is a problem for India. That is how the positions are. They are controlling and gaining critical border crossings. They are gaining control of more and more territory. The moment they land on certain areas, then they'll regroup and they'll start attacking the provincial capitals. The moment provincial capitals falls, it becomes an thing that has happened in the past. They come, they encircle the capital, they'll launch an offensive. Because of the nature of their tactics, it comes in waves and goes in waves. So there has been certain challenges in fighting of them. Now remember, the Afghanistan troops do not have the air support of American troops. Earlier what used to happen was they used to have support of the US troops on the ground, and they used to have the superiority of Air Force, American Air Force. Now they don't have that too. So the chances of territory being lost to Afghan Taliban is higher. On to the next article, we know that there is a delimitation process that is to happen in Jammu and Kashmir before the general elections. Now the Jammu and Kashmir Delimitation Commission has said that there are certain challenges in conducting or carrying out the delimitation process in Jammu and Kashmir. They are of the opinion that the topography, right, they clearly said that their report will be based on 2011 census, and they have also taken into account the topography, difficult terrain, means of communication and convenience available while delimiting 7 additional seats for the 83-member Assembly of Union Territory. Now the only welcome news that we got out of this thing was that they are going to grant reservations to the scheduled tribe and scheduled caste communities in Jammu and Kashmir. On contrary to popular belief, there is a respectable and presentable percentage of SC and ST population in Jammu and Kashmir. Until now, there has been certain hurdles in the representation in the political process, and with the current delimitation process, if and when it is completed, they'll have a representation in the political process of both Jammu and Kashmir. As I said, they were of the opinion that because of the geography of the situation and the distribution of population in certain terrains and certain harsh conditions, it may take some time before the entire delimitation exercise is concluded in Jammu and Kashmir. Acknowledged that, or the chairman of the delimitation process acknowledged that they are reserving 24 seats for Pakistan occupied Jammu and Kashmir, POJK, and they would not be delimited in this process. And they clearly said that this is the first time seats would be reserved for SCs and STs in the legislative assemblies of the UT. And this is the first time that a seat will be reserved for ST in Jammu and Kashmir. Now Jammu and Kashmir has already seats reserved, or 7 seats reserved for SC people, particularly in certain regions of Jammu. Now this will be the first time that an SC reservation will be added to that list also. Now that is the delimitation process in Jammu and Kashmir, and it seems that everything is going on smooth, and we might see a better representation of people in the assemblies of Jammu and Kashmir when it gets its elections done with. So moving on to the next article, privacy policy will be on hold till law is framed WhatsApp. So WhatsApp in its filing yesterday in the Delhi High Court said that till the data protection bill comes into force, it is not going to compel users to opt for its new privacy policy, and it has informed the court that the privacy policy of WhatsApp has been put on hold and will be implemented if Parliament allows it. Now this clarification comes at a time when the Indian government is going after tech companies for not adhering to laws. The particular issue with the WhatsApp group was their double standards. They had one same policy for European users, but they gave the users an option whether to opt in or opt out. But when it came to India, they said nothing doing, everybody should opt in. If you are not going to opt in, we are going to cut services. When the government came hard on these people, they said we are going to stop our operations in India. So they went with a threatening mode. When the Indian government said good, then the courts got involved because they tried to get an injection out of Delhi High Court and the Supreme Court. But as the case is in Delhi High Court, they are fighting at the High Court level. Even the courts came hard on companies, stating that they have no other option but to follow the laws of the land, whether it was in the IT rules or in this case data protection. We don't have a data protection law. See, currently there is a data protection bill that seeks to regulate the use of individuals' data by the government and private companies. It is in front of a joint parliamentary committee. They are examining the bill, and recently the government gave an extension to this parliamentary committee to examine the bill till the monsoon session of the parliament begins, and ask them to submit a report stating of their opinion regards to the data protection bill that Indian government wants to bring in. And in lieu of that, the platform or the instant messaging platform has indicated that we are voluntarily, so this is a face saving strategy, nothing less, but nonetheless they are going to put this WhatsApp privacy policy on hold till the data protection bill becomes a law. So that is the issue right now with privacy policy in regards to WhatsApp. Moving on to the next article, IT rules government plea listed for July 16. Now the Supreme Court on Friday listed the case where the government of India filed a petition asking for the transfer of cases challenging the Information Technology and Intermediary Guidelines Digital Media Ethics Code Rules 2021 from various high courts to itself. There are various cases filed against the IT rules, against the central government, not only by the tech companies but also from various digital media houses and NGOs. Recently, the government of India asked the Supreme Court to consolidate and bring all the cases to the bench before a Supreme Court. Now they are saying that the Supreme Court said that we'll list the plea for July 16th. On July 16th, we'll make a decision. Because again, the case has to be listed, then only the bench can take it up for discussion. Moving on to the next article, Favoring the introduction of Uniform Civil Code in India, the Delhi High Court has observed that the Indian youth need not be forced to struggle with the issues arising due to conflicts in various personal laws in relation to marriage and divorce, where the Delhi High Court observed that the modern Indian society was gradually becoming homogeneous. The traditional barriers of religion, community and caste are slowly dissipating, and thus the Uniform Civil Code ought not to remain a mere hope. This was according to the Delhi High Court bench, which was being headed by Justice Pratibha Singh. Now, during these observations, it was also brought out that the youth of India belonging to various communities, tribes, castes or religions who solemnize their marriage ought not to be forced to struggle with the issues arising due to conflicts in various personal laws, especially in relation to marriage and divorce. One of the best examples for the Uniform Civil Code or the case for Uniform Civil Code made by the Supreme Court was in Shah Banu case in 1985, where the Supreme Court held that the hope expressed in Article 44 of the Constitution that states shall secure for its citizens Uniform Civil Code ought not to remain a mere hope. It is unclear as to what the Government of India intends to do with the implementation of Uniform Civil Code, but nonetheless the Delhi High Court made an observation in these regards and asked the Ministry of or the Secretary of Ministry of Law and Justice to make necessary action that deem appropriate in this regard. So again, the importance of Uniform Civil Code and the need for Uniform Civil Code in India given its current trends. So moving on to the next article, NGT Complete Environment Plans by October 31st. So one of the things that the National Green Tribunal observed that they don't have a complete compilation of data on as to what is the percentage or level of compliance of environmental laws and regulations all over India. So they came up, there was a plan called the District Environmental Plan, which talks about compiling information on vital environmental issues and planning issues that are associated with it, and planning to address gaps in compliance. So they wanted to this effort or this endeavor to be completed by October 31st. Now, the hope was that the Chief Secretaries of all the states and union territories will provide due attention to the subject in larger public interest of health, safety of the citizens and rule of law to effectuate basic fundamental rights of citizens. Now, the DEP, that is the District Environment Plan, may contain data on each environmental issue covering each city, town and village, and must reveal the extent of gap in compliance of relevant norms. This is the DEP that NGT is talking about. So moving on to the next article, central government should frame policy to name airports, says High Court. So the Bombay High Court was hearing a petition in regards to recent request from the local populace of Navi Mumbai, where 20,000 people from a local communities have gathered together and demanded that the new airport that is being constructed in their locality be named after the late activist and parliamentarian D.B. Patil. In regards to that, the division bench was asking, which was headed by the Chief Justice of Delhi, Bombay High Court himself, asked that in a public interest litigation stating that the central government or the aviation minister must consider formulating a uniform policy for naming all airports across the country. We know how naming of airports happens in this country. Now it seems that the judiciary is also interested in understanding what is the process that goes behind naming an airport or something under the Civil Aviation Ministry, which should turn out very interesting in the next few days. So moving on to the next article, Himalayan yaks to be insured. See, insuring of livestock is not new. We know people insuring their livestock all over India, but the problem was that the yak livestock was not being insured till now. Now the high altitude ox is actually under threat because of climate change and change in temperatures across the Himalayan belt. Now this yak livestock will be insured because of actions taken by the National Research Center on yak. Recently, the National Research Center of yak, which is located in Arunachal Pradesh, has tied up with the National Insurance Corporation for insuring their livestock. The National Research Center on yak has came out and said that the countrywide population trend shows that yak population has been decreasing at an alarming rate, and on top of it, with the changes in climate and inexplicable changes in the weather pattern themselves have been reported from yak rearing areas throughout the country. Now, the insurance policy that they are talking about here would shield the yak owners against risk posed by weather calamities, diseases, in-transit mishaps, surgical operations, strikes or riots. Now, this is a welcome sign that yak is being recognized to be a insurable livestock that should ensure and protect the interests of rearers who are rearing yak. So, moving on to the next article, US set to add more Chinese firms to blacklist, says sources. So, US government on its path to block Chinese companies because US government is accusing China of alleged human rights violations on high-tech surveillance and human rights abuse in the Xinjiang province of China. Xinjiang province of China is home to Uyghur Muslims, and the Chinese government is hell-bent on changing them to other than the Uyghur Muslims. We know what is going on in Xinjiang province. There is enough evidence to suggest that China is actually running concentration-style camps and labor-style camps in regards to Uyghur Muslims in Xinjiang province. Now, in order to take action on China, the Biden administration added 10 more Chinese companies to its economic blacklist over the alleged human rights abuses and high-tech surveillance in Xinjiang province. Now, this is not the first time. Last month, I think they added 5 companies to the Chinese entities that are to be blacklisted from doing business in America. And this is again an effort to hold China accountable for the human rights violations. This is according to US government. China again dismissed the accusations of genocide and forced labor in Xinjiang and has been categorically saying that whatever the policies that China has been adopting in Xinjiang province is necessary to stamp out separatists and religious extremists who are plotting attacks and stirring up tensions between mostly Muslim Uyghurs and Han people in Xinjiang province. Han group is the largest ethnic group in China. So that seems to be the issue, recent economic issue between China and America. Thank you. Stay safe. Namaste.
Borthakur IAS Academy. প্রস্তুতি আৰু অধ্যয়নৰ নিৰ্ভৰযোগ্য ঠিকনা।
Borthakur IAS Academy.